and welcome to the channel. And for today's video, we are looking at one of the most odd pickups during my collecting years. The Amalgam Comics, which were a mishmash of Marvel and DC characters. During this time, in the late 90s, DC and Marvel started to work together again, doing intercompany crossovers. There was a perceived rivalry between the two companies. Stories would get printed, and stuff would be said in magazines and whatnot, but for the most part, people would deny that there was a doing some cleanup here during that there was a rivalry between the two companies, as mostly throughout their existence, DC was thought to be the number one company, right, in comics. And then when Marvel came up in the 60s, slowly but surely they started to get fame. By the 80s, Marvel was the number one company. DC was number two. And then by the 90s, Marvel was it. They had most of this, 30 something, 35, 36, 37% of the market share was their books, followed by DC in the low 20s, and then everybody else. But for the longest time, they in the early 70s, not early 70s, in the late 70s, early 80s, they did crossovers. Spider-Man crossed over with Superman. The X-Men and the Titans had a crossover. I'm pretty sure there was one other crossover that I'm missing. The big one, of course, was going to be Justice League and Avengers, but that didn't come to fruition. The project was for a moment approved, right? George Perez started actually doing artwork on some pages, and you can find those pages online. You can see the full story online regarding that crossover that fell through for different reasons. And then they just stopped working together up until the 90s. They did their versus style comics of where fans, when it was decided that they were going to do a crossover, finally, Marvel and DC, they did some books, right? Here and there. I believe Daredevil and Batman did a crossover. I don't know who else crossed over with them. I'm blanking. But then they started doing the versus books, where fans would vote on who would win the outcome of the fight. I remember there was a particular displeasure when I believe Storm beat Wonder Woman. People were upset about that one. But yeah, there were several others. Yeah, that would all lead to the eventual Avengers Justice League crossover drawn by George Perez. I forget who wrote it. I believe it was Kubrick. Don't quote me on that. It was Kubrick or Mark Waid, either one of those two guys. And then came the series of Amalgam books, which was the merger of both characters from both companies into one specific character, right? So of those books, I only bought 3 issues. 2 of those were the ones related to the Dark Claw, which was Batman and Wolverine mashup, right? So there was a comic put out by in the traditional comic style, and then there was an animated, like the Batman animated cartoon, animated adventures. So there were two books that were put out by Dark Claw, and then this one. I don't know why I wanted to pick up this. I guess for just the oddball nature of it, because I mean, uh, I, I don't have any books. I'm lying. I do have one Lobo book. It was a number one that came out in the '90s. I just wanted to see what the hell was wrong, what was going on with the character, because I mean, other than his odd appearance here and there, or just reading stories, interviews with the creators and whatnot, I wasn't that familiar with the character. And Howard the Duck. I mean, my exposure to Howard the Duck was the movie, the one from the '80s that had Leah Thompson in it. Um, but supposedly that version of Howard the Duck is tame compared to how the character is actually portrayed. Uh, so um, so I guess people when they put out ideas for Amalgam, that they thought Lobo and Howard were a perfect mix, or an odd mix, you could say. I don't know. So let's dig into it. So yeah, those are the only Amalgam books that I picked up when the whole thing came out. Um, Steven Seagal, Keenan Ivory Wayne's The Glimmer Man. So here we have a nice opening page, right? We are pretty much trying to establish who the character is going to be. So, Beverline, did the earth move for you too? Fetal fragging feathers. So, the idea regarding the Amalgam books, they're not going for. Well, I mean, I didn't read the entire. I mean, like I already mentioned, I only have a few books, but none of them really truly give you like origin stories. So they're not all like number one issues, right? Some of them, like in this case, they drop you in the middle of a story per se, right? So the idea is that Amalgam Comics was a company that existed and has been publishing comics for so many years. So the idea is that you're being dropped into the middle of story, right? So in this case, Lobo the Duck, apparently he was having some fun time with his girl, and apparently he rocked her world so much that he thought the earth moved, when in fact, Manhattan was decimated. So again, and just to prove that, they how comics have editor's notes, so saying, referencing some story that happened in some other comic, right? So here they do the same thing here when they say see giant sized Bat Thing number 69, right? So they're supposedly trying to reference something that happened before. Obviously there are no 69 issues of Bat Thing, right? But now, before that, let's get to the credits, right? So script, Al Grant. Penciler, Val Semix, I don't know how you say his name. Inker, Ray Crising. I may have mentioned him in something else, in one of the other books. Ray Crising, I forget which one. Colores, Francesco Ponzi, blah, 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 blah. So this came out June of '97. This was published by DC. This particular issue was put out by DC Comics. So yeah, nice 2-page spread. Um, it's obviously the artwork is although it's in a cartoony style, it's still pretty detailed, right? Um, a lot of rock debris, of course, the buildings, thoroughly destroyed, right? Um, so yeah, it's very nice artwork. So obviously he didn't know what the hell happened because he was busy with his girl, and he has no idea what happened to Manhattan. So I guess that's the plot of the story here. Again, all of these comics, like I mentioned, each and every single time, I may have read it once. The day I got it, I read it and forgot about it ever since. So I don't really recall the story around the issue, right? But you can see probably what happened, right? There was a big fight. This is well, not the Red Skull, he's the Green Skull, and then you've got Darkseid, but that's not Darkseid, that's Thanos' side. So, um, well, I'm guessing those are the guys responsible for the destruction of Manhattan. You got Doctor Strange, I'm not sorry, Doctor Fate's helmet, but this is Strange Fate's helmet, right? So obviously Doctor Strange and the mashup with Doctor Strange and Doctor Fate. And then he's trying to figure out what's going on, and then he finds this dog that, throughout the issue, it morphs into different characters. And then a bunch of dead, you know, some dead characters. Any idea who did this to you, pal? Kid Lay. Don't look like I can call on no other heroes. Either the flash effect has burned their images onto the wall and turned them to dust. So this was, I think this is the Spider Boy or Spider Man, and I'm not exactly sure what it was called. Um, the Spider Man and Superboy crossover or mashup. This is Dark Claw. So the Wolverine and Batman mashup, right? The Superman shield that was for the Captain America and Superman mashup. So apparently, whatever happened killed all of the heroes. And then you got these characters. This looks like a scroll, but it also looks like it's the what's this guy? The ventriloquist. The ventriloquist, because we've got the Scarface here. So I'm guessing this is the ventriloquist mashup with a scroll. I don't know why. And then let's see. They're scavengers, I'm guessing. They're picking up whatever they find in the ruins. So this is a pretty cool drawing. What I mentioned in another video regarding doing like debris, right? Convincing debris. It's you think when you're drawing, random stuff in a page, you think you're doing it randomly, but then it comes coming out, it almost looks like you're purposely doing on random, so it doesn't look so random after all. So sometimes what I do to get that randomness, I just, I get a blank piece of paper and then grab something that I can flick some paint at or with, and then flick it at the piece of paper. And then as the splatter forms in a random pattern, I would then pick out, if I'm gonna do something like this, right? I would pick out some of the random splotches and use that as like a guide to make my random pattern of debris. Because like I said, sometimes you're trying to do something that looks organic and it doesn't, or natural, so you either look up online for reference or make your own, right, like I do. So then we switch here to a diner at the middle of nowhere that survived the the destruction of Manhattan. So Lobo the Duck is there, and then we've got this big guy here walking in to the diner, and he's got two chicks on his arms. And speaking of arms, this right here, you can use this as your guide to draw comic book superhero arms. Because just this is pretty much the structure that all you need to make your superhero arms, right? It's got the basic exaggerated proportions that you need, and you can use this as your guide forever and ever and ever. You've got the shoulder muscles, I believe the deltoid muscles, I believe they're called, right? So there's three. There's like three. There's one large one, and then two ones on the side. You got the bicep and the tricep. So you got two balls, you could say, and then you got the muscle that comes down to the elbow. That's one long, smooth muscle or ligament. And then you've got the forearm muscles. You got one that wraps up to the top, and then one that wraps underneath that leads towards the wrist. You got this little bulby little muscle that's over the elbow that wraps underneath the second one that wrapped over the middle, this one right here in the middle. And then a little another muscle that leads towards the wrist. So if you can memorize this image in your mind, you can pretty much draw, superhero arms forever. Although every now and then people will draw a muscle in between right here, between the bicep and the tricep, like this one here. You don't have to. You can do something like this, that's pretty much it. But yeah, so this big brute here, I don't know who is this guy supposed to be. I don't know who's a mashup of what. If he's a character from Lobo's universe or from Howard the Duck's universe. That was Daffy Duck. Obviously, this guy is looking for trouble, picking a fight with Lobo, who's upset that all of his friends have been annihilated. Or I mean, I don't know if he was friends with all of the heroes, but he starts to stomp the guy. One other thing again I want to mention regarding pacing. So you don't want to, because you notice even though the figures are taking up most of the space in the panel, this entire page, other than this one, that has you can't see the background, but on all of these you can see the background, right? And there is no background. There's just color. The background has been dropped out. The idea is you want to keep the pace going, especially once we enter the action sequence, because at this point you already established where we are, right? So you don't really need to draw in the background for into the panels, right? Because it's only gonna slow. Maybe you can give it a background here, a little more detailed background, but other than that, you don't really want to add background to an action sequence, because then because you want the focus to be on the action, right? So if you were to draw a detailed background here or here, it's going to deter from the pace of the action, right? So that's why it's when you're looking at some comics and there's an action sequence and you see a lot of words being spoken while they're fighting, it almost takes you out of the scene or the sequence, but because it's slowing it down, right? Who gives like an entire speech in between a punch, right? So yeah, keeping dialogue to a minimum between action sequences helps speed up the pace, and also eliminating the backgrounds. It doesn't. It allows the viewer to focus on what you want, which is just the action, right? You don't want to distract them from the what it is that you want them to mainly look at, which is the action. And then once it's resolved, you can add in the background, right? So even though as minimal it is right here, he has it here, he has none here, and none here, but he's got a background here and a background here. So once Lobo the Duck finishes this guy off, he apparently the women he came with were enamored by Howard, and having their way with him. Here we switch the scene to a lab of sorts. We got two guys working at a lab, and then these guys break in. I'm not too familiar with who are these supposed to be. AIM soldiers? I don't know. The leader requests gravity machine. So and the guy's like, I don't know. I swear I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And then boom, he gets roasted in the face. The guy obviously it's for comedic effect because he's later still talking, right? He's not really dead. But the guy is like, I don't know what's going on. Do your worst. I've got nothing to tell you, you know. And then they take the machine that he was working down. I don't know. But the entire sequence is drawn uh, pretty well, you know. This is probably other than the 2-page sequence here. Well, not even that one. There was one panel where he this one here. Other than this one and this one here, and then this, he hasn't played with perspective on the shots too much. You know, he's kept it pretty basic on the shot selection, right? Or in this one here, from a 3-point perspective shot. But everything else has been pretty much, you know, at eye level, or slightly modified eye level. But these two shots, you know, are now entering into like a 3-point perspective shot and a worm's eye 3-point perspective shot. And here you see more of those Amalgam comics that came out. Challenge of the Fantastic. So this is Challenge of the Unknown and Fantastic Four. Generation Hex. Don't know why they picked Jonah Hex and the Generation Next cast as a crossover. Iron Lantern, Iron Man, and Green Lantern. Exciting X Patrol. So it's X-Men and the Doom Patrol. Super Soldier, so it's Superman and Captain America. And Magnetic Men featuring Magneto, so it's the Metal Men and X-Men. So back to the story. So here we have an appearance by some lady who we don't know who it is because she's kept in a mist, under wraps and mystery and silhouette. once she walks in, she sees Lobo having been abused in a fun way by these ladies, and we find out that this is Beverly, right? Well, I don't know, they call her Beverly here. Beverly is, of course, from related to Lobo. It's his girl, right? But Lobo, I guess, cheated on her, even though at the very beginning of the story, you know, Yo Beverly, did the earth move for you too? So apparently he was with her, and then just left her, and then he gets into his fight with these guys that came with the two chicks, and he stayed with the girls, and then here she comes, and then decides to kick his ass for cheating on him, I guess, right? And then he leaves her. The artwork reminds me a little bit of early McFarlane. McFarlane, when he was drawing for DC. For what was that? The Infinity something, Infinity Inc. His artwork was very cartoonish, right? And this, for some reason, this particular drawing reminds me a lot of how McFarlane would draw his women, and then later, how he would draw Mary Jane. But yeah, it's just a fun sequence of her beating the snot out of Lobo the Duck here. Overall, it's a solid artwork. And then here we have Lobo picking up, reading a book. I don't know, upset that he doesn't understand what's going on with his girl. And then he comes across these group of people here. Jonas Turnip, I don't know who that is. Gamorola, so that's Gamora with somebody else, and Millie the model. If you're unfamiliar with what Gamora looked like in the comics before the MCU, this is pretty much what she looked like, except she's not a blonde. She had black hair and some black. You know how? Did she? Yeah, she had like black stuff on her face, around her eyes. Apparently, this guy wants to cause some trouble with Howard or Lobo, and then this other guy comes in with, he shoots an arrow through his mouth. They start fighting. Again, another trick of drawing your attention to what you want. But the attention is all on these guys fighting, and then the women in the background, you can drop them out in silhouette because this is the focus that you want, but you're still establishing relationships as far as foreground and background. Then you flip the camera around and you can see the opposite. Now this isn't necessarily the focus. It's them discussing what they want to do, right? Should we interfere? And he was like, nah, I got a better idea. Maybe we should let's go around the corner, right? While these guys are hacking each other up, he walks out with the girls. And then here comes Beverly again. She sees the fight. She runs away and goes around the corner, and she finds Howard with two more chicks after he just had a session with two other chicks. She finds him again with two other chicks and beats him up again. They had their fun. He had his fun, but he's getting the rough end of a hammer, right, for his troubles. But still, he's like, chicks, I don't understand them. What's going on with them? And then you've got this sequence here of we're back to these guys who picked up that whatever it was at the factory. We're here for the what? Gravity machine. Pretty dramatic upshot. This is cool. Like something you would see for like a Doctor Doom, right? And then you see Lobo, yeah, Lobo the Duck riding in on his, well, I don't know if I would call it a hog. It's mallard. That's a mallard with the other type of duck, right? So yeah, for those who know, he rides in a large space Harley type thing. The regular Lobo, right? So in this case, it's got a duck bill on the front, and then he jumps off it, starts fighting everybody, and then he's trying to stop the guy from pulling the lever, conks him in the head. I'm not finished yet, and then that's how it ends in a cliffhanger. Oh no, wait! I thought that was the last page. Yeah, no way, and he proceeds to shoot him up very dramatically. He backs up into the lever, activates the machine, and now it ends in a cliffhanger. So apparently the machine was to pull down the moon and send everything into oblivion. And that's how it ends. So again, you get no resolve on the story because it's just, even though it says no number one, we're still in the middle of a story being told. So yeah, so that's time's almost up. So yeah, that's Lobo the Duck #1, Amalgam Comics. Again, it's fine. You know, you just wanna yuck and har laughs. Pick it up if you find it. If you're a fan of Lobo, if you're a fan of Howard the Duck, pick it up. You know, it's the concept. I mean, the concept sounds interesting in principle, but I don't know how the rest of the other Amalgam books did, and if people like them or not. But I only picked up, like I said, a few ones because I really wasn't interested in the whole thing. So yeah, that's it for now. That's it for now. Thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. And yeah, I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.